Hey everybody, welcome back to Bloodborne. This is part 11 of the playthrough, and after a short detour into Castle Catehurst, we're coming back here to the Forbidden Woods, and we're going to continue on. Right after that shortcut, we take this path down here to the right. I'm going to pick up some cold blood and come down here and meet our first snake ball enemy. Now I did take the fire gems off of my weapon because I had actually gone back and tried to defeat Martyr Ligarius again, and I wanted to see if my damage would be any different if I didn't have the fire gems on the weapon. The damage was about the same, and in the interest of time, I just decided to take it out of the video entirely. We'll go back and we'll take care of Martyr Ligarius in a later video when we're doing some cleanup around the world to do some different quests and things like that. But I've done pretty well at keeping these videos to around 30 to 35 minutes or so, with some exceptions here and there. So I didn't want to add another 10 minutes of just me dying to a boss a couple of times. This second area really does keep with the first area in being one of the most confusing places in Bloodborne. There's a lot of different alternative paths that you can take. Lots of items that you can find down here. As for the snake ball enemies, they're not that hard to take care of. A little bit later we're going to run into some larger ones, and obviously those are going to be a little bit more difficult to take down than these smaller ones, but all in all they don't really pose that great of a risk. The biggest difference between the larger ones and the smaller ones is I believe the larger ones can inflict rapid poison on you, whereas the smaller ones just inflict the slow poison, which is the damage over time type of poison. Lots and lots of like hidden items, hidden behind trees, hidden behind gravestones, things like that. You're going to find some Carol runes down here too. And I'll point those out when we actually get to them. But right there you can see the biggest issue with these snakehead enemies. I'm not sure exactly what they're called, but I just call them snakehead enemies. That main head that comes out of the top and kind of sits higher than all the other heads there, that can actually strike you from the top, and that can make it a little bit harder to deal with than some of the other enemies in this game, because it doesn't come at you straight on, it comes at you from above. So that can be really hard to take care of if you don't know exactly what you're doing. The snake ball enemies that you fight, they're really good for farming murky blood gems and other types of poison blood gems I think you can get from them as well. So if you're looking to do some sort of poison build, this is where you're definitely going to want to come to farm any poison gems at this point in the game. They're definitely not a good source of blood echoes, though, as I'm not getting a whole lot from them. And if you do happen to have any kind of ranged attack, or you're doing some sort of blood tinge build, then you're definitely going to be able to take those snake guys out at a distance a lot easier. And you can actually parry them as well. And I think that I might have tried that once or twice. Maybe even landed one or two. But they're pretty hard to parry. At least in my opinion. It's hard to see exactly which attack that they're winding up to do. Especially the larger head kind of strikes out of nowhere. I want to say too that I recently messed around with the settings of my mic and my recording setup. So if my voice sounds a little different, that's going to be the reason why. And hopefully this will take care of any audio issues that I might have had before, where I would either have a lot of background noise and had to kind of try to edit it out, and it ended up making my voice sound really kind of hollow, and either have like a lot of echo on it or a lot of reverb or something like that. So hopefully this will alleviate a lot of those issues. And as you can see right there, I got into a fight with one of the large snake ball enemies. They can actually hit you from a distance. They have a shooting poison attack that they can use, and that will inflict the slow poison on you. Whereas if they bite you, that's going to inflict the rapid poison attack on you. You can take them out from range pretty easily if you have the Executioner's Glove. If I had hit them twice with that, it would have been enough to kill them. As I was saying in my last video too, this is a really good place to come and get twin bloodstone shards as you go through the area. So you're going to want to pick up as many items as you can possibly find. You don't get any bloodstone chunks until the last little bit of the area, which is why I went to Canehurst beforehand, because if I had not gone there, I would definitely not be doing as much damage as I'm doing right now. And you can see there the benefit of being able to fight those things from range. 2 hits from the Executioner's Glove and it's taken out. I always find the setup of this area very interesting too. You've got these little statues that kind of look like the amygdalas that we're going to start seeing around here soon. You've got all kinds of gravestones and everything like that. This particular area, you know, it doesn't have any village or anything like that. So it's really kind of set up in 2 separate distinct areas. There's no lore implication for that necessarily, and there's no real thought that I can think of or reason that it would be like that. Maybe the shantytown area just kind of never went this far into the woods, probably because of these snakes. And yeah, I tried to be smart and take care of those 2 down there from range, but unfortunately got knocked off by someone that came behind me. That can happen a lot in this area too, so just make sure you really watch your surroundings. I unfortunately was not very careful there and ended up dying, having to come back and grab my blood echoes. The one downside of the Executioner's Glove that I have found in my numerous uses of it, if an enemy is walking towards you and you shoot the Executioner's Glove off, the middle projectile will hit and the other 2 projectiles will sometimes just go around and fail to actually track to the enemy. So you kind of waste a usage of it if you let that happen. Now this guy, I tried to parry him a couple times. And I finally got one off there. But they also have a thing where they can whistle and they can cause all these other snakeball enemies to come up around and help protect them. Off in the distance you can hear one of the man-eater boars. One of those pigs that I always seem to have a little bit of trouble with. Luckily that doesn't happen to me in this particular portion of the game. And if you listen closely in the distance there, you also hear the same sound that the celestial minions were making in the area that we were just at before in Yosephus Clinic. And we're going to run into a few of those in just a moment here. But I was trying to find a way down there without having to actually fall down, so that I could actually show how to get down there the intended way. This was a guy that snuck up on me beforehand. That's the same attack that he used that knocked me off of the cliff into those two giant snake balls. And there I was able to get another parry off on him. I decided to take a little bit of a different approach to that because I didn't want that giant snake ball up there to keep hitting me with poison. Wanted to lure those guys out because there is one of the giant enemies there. And they have some really good range on their physical attacks too. Not just that poison attack that they like to use. I was really trying to be cautious over here. I ended up being a little bit overly cautious, really. Taking a little bit too long to fight these guys. If you have Molotov cocktails as well, they do a pretty decent amount of damage to them. This encounter seems like a pain in the ass, but with the trees there, you can put yourself in between them and the spitting poison attack that they try to use against you. Of course, the whole reason for coming down here and defeating those giant snake balls is so that you can get that Carol rune there. I forget exactly what it does, but having more Carol runes is always good. This is where the path kind of splits off into, I think, 2 or 3 different areas. We're really close to the boss now, but there's still a whole lot to explore. You come down here to the left, and this is where we start running into the celestial minion enemies. With this being so close to Josephus' clinic, one of the implications that I always felt this made is that other people have found their way to Josephus' clinic throughout the night, and she has turned them into these things. Now, as for the reason they might be down here, keep in mind that you enter Josephus' clinic through a broken window. So, my assumption is that these guys somehow escaped. And now they are just kind of chilling down here and hanging out. No other real reason that I can think of for why these would be down here. Which means that the imposter Yosefka that we talked to in the last episode, she's been really busy. And of course down here you get another Carol rune. Anti-clockwise metamorphosis, I don't remember which one it does, but the clockwise and anti-clockwise Carol runes, they increase your HP and your stamina. And this, of course, is the area that we could have dropped down earlier that I was talking about. But we're going to turn around and take some other paths because that is everything that you can get down there. Now, as for why that is the only place that the celestial minions are, I don't really have any answers for that. One would think if they did all escape from Josephus' clinic, You'd find them throughout the woods a little bit easier. But that not being the case, one could make the argument that they just, kind of have lived down there for a while. This is an area where, if you wanted to, you could use the shining coins to kind of mark your way so that you don't get lost like I was kind of doing here. And you can see he did his little summon attack there. I tried to sneak up on him, but he definitely was not having it. And of course you're going to run into a few man-eater boars down here. We've been hearing them for a while. And if you come across this, I thought that we would be able to reach that item, but I don't actually find a way to that item. So I'm not exactly sure how to get up there. But coming down here, you get the Graveguard robe. And I'm not sure exactly how good or bad that armor is. I've never used it. I don't think I've ever actually equipped it on my character either, so I'm not sure how it looks. But being called the Graveguard set, one can insinuate that there were probably people down here guarding these graves at some point. For what purpose, I'm not aware of, but that's the only thing I can think of as to why that would be named that and be found down here. And this is where you're going to find your Bloodstone chunk, your big reward for coming through all of this and exploring all of these areas, finding all of these items. As to what I was saying earlier about the name of the set that we just picked up, that's one of the things that I kind of give Bloodborne a little criticism for. Because of the fact that you can't really find weapons off of enemies or armor off of enemies, you don't really get a whole lot of backstory about the individual areas or the individual types of enemies that you would get in other Souls games through the item descriptions and things like that. If you loot armor off of an enemy in Dark Souls, it'll give a little bit about, maybe where that enemy is from, what exactly they're doing there. And with Bloodborne, you can't really get that because of the way that they decided to implement their armor and weapon system. And that's not a bad thing. The environmental storytelling in this game is wonderful. They do a lot to really step up the NPC dialogue to where they give a little bit more exposition than some of the dialogue in the other Souls games do. And all in all, the item descriptions that they have in Bloodborne, I feel are a little bit more concise and a little bit more forthcoming with information than some of the ones are in the Souls series. Honestly, I can't believe I made it out of that one alive. That one was just pure luck right there. So there you go. There's my almost death to a man-eater boar of this particular episode. Sure, we'll be seeing a few more of those as the playthrough goes on. This is where you open up that shortcut that we saw a little bit earlier. There's actually another shortcut, another elevator that you can open up, I believe. But I did not end up finding that. I found it before, but I just could not remember how to actually get there at this point. So I just kind of skipped it entirely and decided to go on to the boss. Where we just were at, that is the actual boss room. But I turned back and wanted to make sure that I got whatever was up here. Just kind of doing one last check and one last backtrack to make sure that anything that I did want to get, I could actually find. Unfortunately, that did end up resulting in a death, and I believe it was the same place that I died beforehand. So, yeah. But enough playing around. It's time to go and fight the Shadows of Yarn. This fight can be pretty easy, but it can also be pretty difficult depending on which one of these guys you take out first and how good you are at actually separating them from one another. If you let them get together and gang up on you, they can take care of you pretty quickly. But if you're able to separate them, keep them apart, and just whittle them down one by one, they end up not being too much trouble. So I'm going to let this fight just play out. I end up using a few oil urns on them and some fire paper just to get a little bit of extra damage. And I also use one of the beast blood pellets to try to get extra damage from that as well. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.